Good evening, Planning Commission. We are joined by Richmond side for a little bit of press op for some of the articles that we're going to be in the upcoming weeks, and so they want to take a photo of our continually minted edition of Planning Commissioners. So, go ahead.
I'm going to stand like right up there to get the whole group. Y'all can just sit up to make sure you're not getting blocked by. Stand right here, and then I'm just going to keep this.
Okay, I don't know if the TV guys.
This is a lot. A lot, quite a lot. Yeah, I know.
Okay, let me call to order the Planning Commission meeting of April 2nd, I guess this is. We'll begin with the roll call, please.
Chair Harrison,
Present.
Vice Chair Burt Baker,
Here.
Secretary Timmons.
Here.
Commissioner Golovitz is absent. Commissioner Shahid
Here.
and Commissioner Benitez.
Here.
Next, we have introductions. I think we've got a couple of fairly new commissioners, and it'd be good for everyone to get to know who they are. So should we go left? We'll start with Gaze and go this way.
Just say my name.
Yeah, just say your name, I guess.
Yeah.
Your name and one fun fact maybe.
And,
Yeah, a little icebreaker. Why not?
my name is Gay Timmons, and I own a business here in Richmond, and I sell organic oils. And this week, I learned that argan trees have roots that go 150 feet into the soil to get water, and that blew me away.
I am Bruce Brubaker. I'm a longtime Planning Commission member. I think I started before the pandemic, and I'm also a longtime Richmond resident. I've been here for over 30 years.
John Harrison, I'm currently the chair of the commission, been here about 8 years and been on the commission for about 4 years.
And hello, everyone. I'm Diana Benitez, the newest commissioner. I have been living in the Bay Area for 7 years now and moved to Richmond last year, and I'm super excited to be involved in this work with you all.
We're really glad to have you. Thanks for joining.
You've got one more, yep.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I guess-
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. My name is Shazib Shahid. I've been here since 2008, so a long time. An icebreaker. I tried a fish eye before, which was pretty interesting. Wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, and we have one commissioner didn't make it this evening. All right, I guess the next item is the approval of minutes. We have minutes from the March 5th meeting. Is there a motion to approve or any corrections required?
I have a question or a clarification on the minutes. If I may ask Planning Manager Stark. One of the items during discussion was that the EVA in Point Richmond was about to be completed. There was going to be a final inspection, and following the inspection, there would be a formal update from the city. And I'm wondering if it was completed and if an update has been given.
The final inspection has been completed. I've been waiting for the chief to send me an official memo so that I can provide it to the commission and to the community. But they did do their final inspection and it did pass. So there is the appropriate emergency vehicle access in the event, hopefully unlikely of an emergency, that they would need to open that gate to maneuver in and out fire trucks or people. But I will get an official memo sent out to the community as soon as I get one from the chief.
Okay, thank you. So if nobody has anything else, I'll move to approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
And since we have someone remote, I think we have to do a roll call vote, correct?
We'll do a roll call. Chair Harrison,
Yes?
Vice Chair Burbaker,
Yes?
Secretary Timmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Golovitz is absent, Commissioner Shaid,
Yes.
and Commissioner Benitez, you were not
Abstain,
present. Abstain.
yeah.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Approval of agenda, this is sort of new. Is that, are you looking to see if we need to add anything, or?
We're just, we've been making some updates to our agendas for all of our bodies just to be a little bit more in alignment. Technically, under your bylaws, there is an opportunity for you to rearrange the agenda if you chose. It just wasn't clearly articulated in the agenda itself. So we've added it in there as a
Great.
a
We'll know
matter
that
of
going
order.
forward.
Yes,
That doesn't take a motion or anything, does it? Just opportunity to amend it? If somebody doesn't want to amend it, we just go forward?
correct. If you don't want to amend it, you could motion to approve the agenda as is. If you wanted to amend the agenda, someone would motion to change items or the order of the items on the agenda, and then
Okay.
you would vote.
Is there a motion to approve then, or did someone request a modification?
I motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
And Commissioner Chair Harrison,
Yes?
Vice Chair Burbaker,
Yes?
Secretary Timmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Golovitz is absent, Commissioner Shaid,
Yes.
and Commissioner Benitez.
Yes.
Okay, next is consent calendar. I don't believe we have any consent items tonight, so we'll go to the Brown Act. This is an opportunity for anybody in the public wishing to address the commission on an item that is not on the agenda to do so. I don't believe we have any, we do have good. We have one speaker right here. Let's go forward.
So,
Yeah, gotta turn it.
good evening, Chair Harrison, Commissioners. For the record, I am Cordell Handler, and I'm a Richmond resident. So I do want to welcome Diana and Shazade online. So it's nice to meet you both. So I do apologize for not coming to last month's meeting because I had a conflict in Hercules, the mayor's conference. So it was a good turnout for me. So while I was there, I thought about what I was going to tell you, bring up forward. So if you recall at the January meeting when the Hilltop District and myself, we came before you all to express our opposition regarding the Chevron to sell alcohol. One of the things that I have noticed is the thought that had occurred to me. It said that the idea of Chevron to sell alcohol, it affects the community because I have talked to some of the schools adjacent to it, and they had concerns. Like all it takes is like 2 beers for somebody to buy 2 beers, and it crashes because I was reading an article recently about the effects about alcohol and teenage and drunk driving. It concerns me because as someone who has nieces and nephews that are like in the teenage range, I am concerned about their safety, and I do not feel obligated to feel that the idea of get them in a backseat of somebody who's been drinking, it scares me. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe Chevron as a gas station, that's fine. But selling alcohol, that's a big concern to me because I understand where Mr. Singh is coming from. He has to pay bills for his family. I understand. But you also got to understand the Hilltop District and our concerns because it's something that really is showing me the light of like how serious this matter is. So I'm thinking to myself, how can we make sure that people that do buy alcohol at Chevron, you have to think about it though. It takes us like a crash in a blink. So I'm saying to myself, we have to be mindful because I think about children every time, and it's like And it's scary to see that somebody would, in a blink of an eye, die of a drunk driving. So I let it thought marinate. But the last thing is like, I will say it once again for the newer commissioners that the neighborhood councils are aware that anytime when projects come before this body or anybody, the neighborhood council has to weigh in on this. So I let it marinate. So that's it, and I'll try to be here more often.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else here in the chambers. Do we have anybody online that wishes to speak to the commission on an item not on the agenda?
No, we do not, Chair.
Okay, so then we can move on to, that's public forum. Is that the same as the Brown Act now? Are they different? That's what we just did, public forum, so Brown, I think they're a little redundant, aren't they?
My apologies. That should be one. F and G should be
Okay,
one.
good.
Okay, I will adjust. Thank
Okay,
you.
I didn't blow it then, good. Okay, we're next to, we'll go to the public hearings. First, we held over items, there's an item 1 for the Cascade Townhomes, which is going to be postponed until our next meeting on April 16th. So we'll go to item 2, which PLN 26-071, Housing Element Implementation Phase 1. I'll take to staff to give us a presentation.
Yes, good evening, Planning Commission. Avery Stark, Planning Manager. The majority of this presentation will be provided to you by Kylie of EMC, who will introduce herself. This is, again, a long-awaited update to the zoning code and a general plan amendment to continue to bring our housing element into substantial compliance with the goals the city had established with its 8-year housing element. This is what we've considered phase 1, which has been focused on primarily just the code codified updates that would need to be able to set us forward on a good foundation and a good footing for the remainder of the 6 years for the progress of further implementation. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Kylie for her introduction and her presentation this evening.
Yes, thanks, Avery. Again, my name is Kylie Pope. I'm with EMC Planning Group, and I've been working on phase 1 implementation for the city. So if you want to go ahead and put the presentation up. Okay. So tonight, like Avery said, I'll be walking you through a set of proposed municipal code and general plan amendments that implement the city's adopted six-cycle housing element. But before I get into the presentation, I want to take a moment to recognize the city and the community. Getting to this point, having an adopted and state certified housing element is a significant accomplishment. Many jurisdictions across California are still out of compliance or have not yet moved into implementation. So the fact that Richmond has a compliant housing element and is now actively moving forward with implementation that will facilitate housing production really puts the city ahead of the curve. So give yourselves a pat on the back. And then just a little bit of a reminder, or maybe if you didn't know, just some education. Currently, the state through Housing and Community Development Department, known as HCD, they're actively monitoring jurisdictions and in some cases taking enforcement actions where cities are not making progress toward their housing obligations. So a reminder that tonight's actions reflect not just compliance, but a proactive effort to implement the housing element and support housing development in the community. Next slide. So as a quick refresher, the city adopted its housing element in early 2023 and received certification from the state later that year. With that adoption, the city also committed to the timely and effective implementation of all housing element programs. So nothing you're seeing tonight should come as a surprise. The proposed amendments are not introducing any new policy direction. They're simply carrying out those adopted commitments. Next slide. So the first group of amendments focuses on development standards, primarily related to density, height, and parking. So at a high level, the goal here is to allow more housing in appropriate areas by increasing minimum densities, modestly increasing building heights, and removing parking requirements near transit. So beginning with the proposed parking amendments, AB 2097 requires jurisdictions to eliminate parking minimums within a half-mile of major transit, which helps reduce development costs and constraints and would apply to new development and changes of use. Additionally, proposed amendments update the definition of major transit stops to be consistent with state law, which now includes bus rapid transit stations, in addition to rail transit stations, ferry terminals, and also the intersection of two major bus routes. The state also updated the definition to increase the frequency of service intervals from 15 to 20 minutes. Next slide. So here's a closer look at the proposed density and height amendments. We'll start with density. The amendments establish a minimum density of 20 dwelling units per acre in residential zones, which is your RM1 and your RM2. And you can see that the existing minimum density for RM1 is 10 dwelling units per acre. And what's proposed again is the 20 dwelling units per acre. And RM2, you have an existing density of minimum density of 15 dwelling units per acre. And then for your mixed use zones, that's your CM1 through your CM5. And you can see that amendments to the minimum density are only proposed for CM1, 2, and 3. And again, it's that proposed 20 dwelling units per acre. This is to help ensure that sites are developed at a level that can realistically support housing production, including affordable housing, and this is consistent with HCD's guidance. So as for the proposed height amendments, they allow for modest increases in building height, primarily to better accommodate 3 to 4 story construction. I want to point out that there are no amendments to the permitted number of stories for these zoning districts. We're only talking about the maximum height. And so for RM1 and RM2, the existing maximum height is 35 feet. What's proposed is an increase of 3 feet, so 38 feet for the maximum height. And then for the mixed use, I want to point out that the proposed heights here, and it's not in this slide, I apologize. I should have made this distinction, but the proposed maximum heights for mixed use zones are only in relation to the proximity to residential zoning districts. So the overall district maximum heights for CM1 through CM5 are not being amended. There's no proposed amendments. Those will remain at 45 feet for CM1 and 2, 55 feet for CM3 and 5, and 135 feet for CM5. We are only talking about proposed amendments for these zones in relation to proximity to residential zones. Now, you might ask why increase height if the change is relatively modest, and in this case, very modest. And the reason is just to better accommodate real world development needs. For example, higher floor to ceiling heights are increasingly expected in residential construction. And in mixed use buildings, additional height is especially important. It helps provide adequate ground floor commercial space while still accommodating those residential units above. So ultimately, these amendments are providing modest but meaningful increase in flexibility while also bringing better alignment between the city's form-based code and zoning code. Next slide. The next set of amendments focuses on the development review process itself. Specifically, the city would be shifting from subjective design standards to objective standards. So in practical terms, that means projects are evaluated based on clear, measurable criteria rather than discretionary findings about aesthetics, or compatibility. Next slide. So here's how that would look in the code in regards to the design review criteria. The city would remove subjective language like sense of place, design integrity, aesthetic compatibility, and instead focus on whether a project meets adopted standards in the general plan and the zoning code. What remains are the core considerations like circulation, safety, infrastructure, but they're evaluated in a more objective and consistent manner. And the overall outcome of this shift is greater clarity and predictability. So that way, applicants know what's required, staff can apply consistent standards, and decision makers like yourself have a clear basis for approvals. Next slide. Now, in the same vein, the city would remove subjective language from its required findings as well. So this would be particularly around findings of impacts to livability, appropriate development, or impacts to neighborhood character, and instead focus findings on consistency with the general plan or other objective criteria. Again, the city would maintain important protections related to nuisances, infrastructure, and public services. Again, so the overall goal here is to make findings clear, consistent, and more defensible. And I want to point out that the proposed amendments for design review criteria and required findings align with state requirements that housing development be reviewed using objective standards wherever possible. Next slide. So the next section focuses on expanding housing types allowed in the city consistent with state law. Overall, these changes ensure that broader ranges of housing, such as residential care facilities, low barrier navigation centers, supportive housing, and emergency shelters, can be developed in appropriate zones and with clear standards consistent with state law. So for residential care facilities, under the proposed amendment, the city would allow them in residential zones and treat them the same as other residential uses of the same type. So for example, in a single family zone, a residential care facility would be subject to the same standards as a single family home. In a multifamily zone, it would be treated like a multifamily use. So the goal here is to ensure that these types of facilities are permitted objectively. Again, it's that objective permitting, and then also consistently without additional or unique requirements. For supportive housing, the amendments allow it by right in all zones where multifamily and mixed-use developments permitted. This means no discretionary review, no CUP, no planned unit development permit required. And the existing code almost meets this requirement, but there was a required amendment to permit them in the regional commercial, the CR zoning district. The amendments also expand how emergency shelters are defined under state law to include navigation centers, bridge housing, and respite or recuperative care, and also reduce parking requirements for emergency shelters. Now, finally, the proposed amendments update employee housing standards to align with state requirements. So housing for 6 or fewer employees is treated as a single family use. So definitions of single unit detached and attached dwellings in the code were updated to reflect that. Now, for larger configurations up to 36 beds or 12 units, employee housing is deemed as an agricultural use, consistent with state law. So in regard to employee housing, these were just clarifications needed in the code, and they didn't require broader changes to the zoning code beyond updating definitions. Next slide. For general plan alignment, the proposed amendments are really about making sure the general plan and zoning code are consistent with each other, which currently they are not. So this includes amending permitted densities and heights for the medium density residential designation, and also amending densities for mixed-use designations. Next slide. So this slide shows how the general plan and zoning designations are being aligned to ensure consistency. So on the far left side, medium intensity mixed use commercial emphasis. You can see here, we kind of have a pattern going. So we have to the far left column, this is a land use designation. To the right of it, we have the corresponding zoning district, and so on and so forth. So I do want to note for the commission, I think that the packet that was printed and that you have includes a clerical error, unless staff was able to get you the updated one. But so I put it in red here. I want to clarify that in this far left column for commercial emphasis mixed use designation, the proposed amendments propose a minimum density of 20 dwelling units per acre. In a previous iteration, it said 30 dwelling units per acre, but the amendment, in fact, is 20, a minimum of 20 dwelling units per acre to correspond with the CM3 density increase. So moving on from there, the community nodes and gateways mixed use designation, the proposed amendments are establishing a minimum density, which it currently does not have, of 30 dwelling units per acre, and also increasing the maximum density from 75 dwelling units per acre up to 82.5. And if you look to the column to the right of it for CM4, you'll notice that the increase in the maximum density is to bring consistency with the zoning code, which is currently permitting a greater maximum density than what is allowed under the general plan. And then moving on to the high intensity mixed use, similarly, we're proposing to establish a minimum density of 40 dwelling units per acre, and increasing the maximum from 125 to 135 to align with what zoning is currently permitting, again, which is greater than what's currently permitted in the general plan. So saying dwelling units per acre so many times is hard. Thanks for bearing with me, everyone. So overall, these changes don't introduce any new development capacity beyond what zoning already allows, with the exception of the proposed minimum increases in zoning density, which I previously presented. It's that increased minimum density of 20 dwelling units per acre for RM 1, 2, and CM 1 through 3. So again, these amendments are ensuring general plan is consistent with the zoning code and the housing element. Next slide. We're almost through it. So the housing element also includes an implementation action to update the city's density bonus ordinance to be consistent with state law. The main changes here was to streamline the ordinance and directly reference state law so that it remains compliant even as state requirements evolve over time, which we know they do. We've seen that in the last few years. So you'll notice in your packet, throughout this ordinance, there's quite a bit of strike through, and that's just part of the overall streamlining effort. Rather than reiterating state law directly into the city's code, the ordinance is proposed to be revised to reference applicable statutes. And this approach just reduces the need for updates as state law changes, and also helps avoid inconsistencies or errors between the municipal code and state requirements. So overall, this is really about making the ordinance efficient, easy to maintain, and consistently aligned with state law. Next slide. So since staff's already proposing amendments to the key terms and definitions section of the code, city staff's proposing some cleanup, including removing the key terms section, which is very redundant. You'll see in the packet, it's several pages of key terms, and then following it are again the key terms, but then they're defined. So proposing to remove the list of key terms, and then also updating definitions including the ADUs, JADUs, and efficiency units to ensure consistency with state law, but also to ensure consistency with the city's updated ADU ordinance, which is being discussed later this evening. So these changes will just help the code be more clear and internally consistent. Next slide. We made it. Okay, so stepping back, these amendments collectively do a few things. So they're ensuring compliance with state housing law, aligning the city's plans and regulations, removing barriers to housing development, establishing more predictable and objective standards, and most importantly, they're expanding opportunities to develop different types of housing across the city. Next slide. So based on all of this, staff's recommending that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution recommending City Council approval of these amendments. This action would implement the city's housing element programs and ensure the city maintains compliance with state housing law. Next slide. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. Again, kudos to the city for getting to this point. Give yourselves a pat on the back. It's no small feat. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the consultant? Okay, I don't see anyone with a question at the moment. So I'm sure you'll be around in case something comes up. I have one question for staff. Just can you clarify for me how, if at all, this affects that form-based code that we adopted a few months ago for parts of the city?
Yes, the form-based code was adopted in 2023, so a few years
Longer ago than I thought.
These impacts are consistent. So the changes that are proposed this evening are in alignment with the form-based code. A lot of this alignment was to ensure that heights and minimum and maximum densities further are consistent with the form-based code. So none of these amendments will change the form-based code because the form-based code is already in good standings. This is to change like the traditional zoning code that the city has in conjunction with the form-based code.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Gay?
This is for staff also. Where is the agricultural land that was referenced?
So the agricultural land is a reference to a type of housing product.
No, I understand that. Where is the land in Richmond?
North portions of North Richmond, as you make your way up to the hilltop and into El Cerrito and El Sobrante, we do have agricultural lands that abut the bay.
Do you have an approximate acreage?
I do not have an approximate acreage off the top of my head, but I can certainly get back to you with the exact acreage.
I just, having come from an agricultural background,
Yeah.
I listened to her and I thought,
The city of Richmond has
we
have a smaller amount of agricultural land, but the important part is this is consistency with state law around ensuring that we can accommodate housing types that would suit and be suitable for agricultural types of housing. We have, wine country is not that far away, and so in the event that someone wanted to produce housing in Richmond that would allow for access to farming of anything agriculturally within our vicinity, we'll now have alignment with state law. But I will get you the precise acreage of agriculturally zoned land in the city of Richmond, because I do have the information.
I am very curious. Thank you.
Yes.
I have some questions. Thank you for the report. I did have some things that came up in my previous review and also during that presentation. One is regarding height. So we're making a change to the maximum height in RM1, RM2, but not in the commercial mixed-use districts. So the maximum height remains 35 in those districts, even though there's a sense that a height of 38 will make it easier to develop housing. So why wouldn't we make that change also in the commercial mixed-use zones?
Kylie, I'll let you answer that one if you would want to give that one a shot.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going back to my notes. And apologies, because in the table, I noticed this afterward, and so I made an edit, but then there were technical difficulties and I wasn't able to share my screen. So my updated slide didn't make it on there. But to reiterate, we're not proposing changes to the maximum heights for mixed-use zones CM1 through CM5. You're correct. However, the slide, and I don't know, Avery, if you want to put it back on the screen so everyone can see, it's slide 4 in the presentation. Yeah. So it says maximum height 35 for all of those mixed-use districts, CM1 through 5. However, that is the existing maximum height in relation to proximity to residential zones. That's not the overall district maximum height for those mixed-use zones. What it is actually like the overall district maximum height for CM 1 and 2 is 45 feet actually. And for CM 3 and 4, it's 55, and for CM 5, it's 135. But that's not what we're proposing amendments to. So those will remain in place, and you can, they're much higher. So amendments to them are not necessarily needed. What we're discussing amendments to is the allowed height for a mixed use zone that is adjacent to a residential zone. Does that
Yeah.
answer your question?
Yeah, yes, although it doesn't give a reason why it wasn't changed.
The overall district maximum?
No, the proximity, the height in mixed use proximate to residential zones remains at 35.
The amendments proposed are to modestly increase it. So for CM1 and 2, that proximity height would be 38 rather than 35. And for CM3, 4, and 5, it increases to 45 feet.
So it is being changed, even in areas that are next to residential zones.
Proposed to be changed, yes,
Proposed to be
modestly.
changed. I think when I read through the FAT packet, I found a reference, you could check this later, height on San Pablo for this, I think it was CM3 zone, was 35, and it's listed in the packet as such. So it wasn't listed as being a strikeout change. So maybe there's just,
I will double check that.
okay.
We are proposing those changes, so I'll double check that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, then I have questions about waivers. So we're making a higher density requirement, minimum density, in certain zones. And I'm wondering if that requirement would be eligible for a developer to choose as a concession or a waiver to avoid that minimum density. Do we know that? It's not listed in the list that's in the packet of allowable waivers.
Are you talking about for the density bonus ordinance?
I'm not sure. Well, where do you have concessions or waivers? Is it only density bonus?
That would be
or
for
it's
density
330,
bonus.
SB 330, right?
It would
That
be
would be-
density bonus.
That would be state density bonus. So
State,
SB
yeah.
330 is the application type that would lock into place fees and regulations for an entitlement, which would then be required to submit a formal application within 180 days. That application could still seek density bonus waivers and concessions. In many cases, what we're seeing currently is projects aren't even meeting the minimum density of the zoning districts that they're in. And under state law for state density bonus, you don't actually have to be producing the minimum density to be eligible for density bonus waivers. That's recently changed within the last 2 or 3 years. Welcome to our lives. It's a moving target. So I suppose in theory, if a developer wanted to propose an application in RM1 where the density was only going to be, say, 10 units per acre, theoretically, I suppose that's a reasonable concession in the sense that if it would otherwise preclude them from being able to build housing, and particularly affordable housing, if they were providing affordable housing on that site, which they would have to through state density bonus, it's feasible, I suppose. I don't think I've seen a case where that's come up, and the majority of the developments we see for affordable housing, they're seeking to develop 100% affordable housing and get all of the waivers and concessions. And at that point, the goal is to produce and build as many units as possible at those lower market rate values, and then potentially have some market rate component to their building to help offset some of those costs. So I think it's a test that could certainly be applied, and we would review developers, waivers and concessions for state density bonus as we received it.
If I may, I think it's happening in many places in the Bay Area where developers are kind of leaning towards developing, lower density residential. They find it's penciling better. It means, in some cases, violating or ignoring the required minimum density. And I guess it seems counter to, the housing law. It's the goals for the state. And, we've had two projects. Terminal 1 is coming up, Marina Point. I just wonder how much power we have, even after these updates are made, to require developers to produce the minimum density required in our objective municipal code. I mean, no one can say that's subjective. So anyways, that's my point about density. Let's see. Transit corridor. So there's a redefinition of the major transit stop, which is in the packet. I saw no mention of a transit corridor, which is also allowed. It provides for lower parking or zero parking requirement within a half mile of major transit corridor, but it's only mentioned as being a half mile to major transit stop. And so I just want to confirm, I don't know if it's possible to look into this, or maybe I'll just suggest that you ensure that requirement also pertains, or that allowance for zero parking also pertains to transit corridors.
Yeah, we can certainly confirm. It is my understanding that with the update to major transit stops, so the city of Richmond has 3, major being the BART that is in El Cerrito and our ferry terminal. We have a major stops also along San Pablo, where there are those intersections of 2 stops of now frequencies of 15 minutes or greater, or now 20 minutes. The reference to corridor is generally used when we're talking about accessory dwelling units and additional height allowances. And so state law does this fun thing where they like to mince the word corridor and high quality transit stop, and then sometimes they use high quality transit corridor. But we will be sure to review our proposed language with legal and ensure that where we're using a major transit stop is accurate for the reduction of parking, and where the term major transit corridor, it needs to be added as a definition to help ensure consistency where we're talking about height allowances for accessory dwelling units, or in some instances where commercial space can be converted into residential units now under SB 6,
Right.
SB.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Yeah, that's right. I would also add, I believe the Route 72, which ends at Point Richmond, is also a it's high-quality transit, so that's part of the corridor.
Yes, that would be part of the corridor. So like on our zoning map today, that shows up as half a mile buffer distance from that corridor where homes can have higher ADU sizes and heights.
Okay, great, thank you. So then a couple other things, so that was my pre-review, and then a couple things tonight. Emergency shelters are being streamlined, or at least the residential care is being streamlined. Are emergency shelters being streamlined as part of this update?
Emergency shelters are being clarified in terms of their definition, and we've provided objective standards for measuring the ways in which an emergency shelter can be operated within the city of Richmond, whereas prior we did not have as rigorous objective standards, and in some places, the goal was to create alignment with the state to ensure that the regs that we were applying were within the boundaries of allowance.
Okay, do they require a commercial use permit if they're in a residential area?
In most instances now, no. An emergency shelter becomes a permitted by right use, a by right land use, with a series of objective standards that still need to be met. So they would be submitting for like a zoning compliance review, and so then we would review compliance.
But that would be in-house and would not come to commission?
Correct.
Okay. Last question. Does the state does HCD need to review these implementation changes, or they let cities go ahead and do it? They don't care?
So when the state certified our housing element and all of these changes were outlined as being our implementation to the 6th cycle, they've effectively greenlit the city to go forward with all of these updates and changes for codified code language and then all the programmatic upgrades as well. And so what will happen is every year, as a part of the annual housing progress report, which I just finished, we report back on all of the objectives and all the goals and the progress that we've made towards them. And so these, for this last year, are indicated as being in progress and will be adopted as of this meeting, effectively through council later this year. So next year, we'll report back that they're done, and I would provide links to the zoning code where they can review it. And a lot of this code does still get sent to HCD for review and certification to make sure that we're still, airtight on our findings and legal words.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a comment.
Comment, excellent.
Yeah. Just want to say thank you for all of this work. And I didn't give a fun fact when I introduced myself, but a few years ago, I had the opportunity to help write a section of the housing element, but it was the affirmatively furthering fair housing section. I had not read the whole shebang, and so I got to read a lot of it in detail. And I just also wanted to thank staff for taking the time to answer some of my questions ahead of time that I believe were shared with the rest of the group.
Okay, there's no other questions from the commission. Suppose I need to open this as a public hearing to see if anybody in the listening public has a question or comment. I don't think Cordell is here any longer, so we won't have anyone here. Is there anyone online who has raised their hand? No?
No one is online.
Okay, then I will close the public hearing. And what's the wish of the commission relative to moving forward on this?
Anybody want to make a motion?
Somebody's got to. Just the number 2 down there.
There was a slide that had.
Yes, same language.
Yeah, if KCRT could just put up the slide I have on my screen for the commission. Thank you.
I motion that we adopt resolution number 26-06, recommending approval of the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance as provided in Exhibit A to implement the city's adopted housing element and comply with state housing element law.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, then we could have a roll call vote, please.
Chair Harrison,
Yes?
Vice Chair Burbaker,
Yes.
Secretary Timmons,
Yes.
Commissioner Golovitz is absent, Commissioner Shahid,
Yes.
and Commissioner Benitez.
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. We're on to item 3, PLN 25-019, the ADU code update. And if we could have the staff presentation. Do I need to announce the if somebody wants to appeal that, they have until, our decision, they have until such and such a day?
You just did.
It's like 10 calendar days from today, so that'd be like the 12th of April.
Yeah, in this case, because you're making a recommendation to council, it's not an appealable decision. It's just that council will take
Okay.
further action as it's legislative. And then I will go ahead and introduce Michelle Morris, Senior Planner within our Long Range Planning Unit with the City of Richmond, who will be presenting this evening on our update to ADU ordinance. This was previously brought to you middle of last year, and then the state did a fun thing and changed the law again. And so we made sure to bring it back to you for updates to be compliant with that. And so Michelle will give her presentation on that. Go ahead.
Good evening, Chair Harrison and Planning Commissioners. As Avery said, I'm Michelle Morris, Senior Planner concentrating on long-range planning for Richmond, and I'm presenting an overview of the amendments proposed to the city's accessory dwelling unit ordinance. We're returning to the Planning Commission due to the very recent and numerous updates to accessory dwelling unit laws by the state legislature. So today, the overview for the presentation has to do with the purpose to review the recommended amendments to the city's accessory dwelling unit ordinance, Richmond Municipal Code sections 15.04.610.020 and related changes to sections 15.04.104, 15.04.201.03, and 15.04.201.050. I promise I won't read them all the time, though. So the recommended actions is to hold this public hearing and adopt a resolution recommending approval of the zoning text amendments to the sections I just read out to you, that you can see there on the screen, of the Richmond Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. To set a baseline, I have the definitions for an accessory dwelling unit and junior accessory dwelling units. They do mesh with the previous presentations of the definitions of the same. The proposed amendment has to do with attached and detached ADU definitions, include an attached or detached residential dwelling unit that provides complete independent living facilities for one or more persons and is located on the same lot as a proposed or existing single-family or multi-family dwelling. It includes permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation on the same parcel that the single-family or multifamily dwelling is or will be situated. An accessory dwelling unit may be within the same structure as the primary dwelling, in an attached structure, or in a separate detached structure on the same lot. So it gives examples there, and you can see how these all differ with the yellow areas on each image there. To give a background, in October 2024, the State Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, completed a review of the city's accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling unit ordinance adopted in November 2020. Then on July 17th, this body, the Planning Commission, recommended a draft ordinance to be presented to the City Council for their approval. There were numerous changes to the ADU code. I'm sure you guys are aware of that, and additional changes to the ADU ordinance, ADU and JADU state law were enacted on October 10th, 2025, and on January 1st, 2026. So we're playing catch up here. The proposed ordinance brings the city's municipal code into compliance with recent changes, as I said. Some examples, just a few of the examples, are JADUs can be in attached garages. The major transit stop and high-quality transit corridor are defined in the Public Resources Code section and will come up to compliance with those requirements as well. The rules for height have been updated, and just as an example, an additional 2 feet in height is allowed to accommodate a roof pitch on the ADU that's aligned with the roof pitch of the primary dwelling unit. And sorry for the typo there, it says no replacement parking is required when covered parking is demolished or converted in conjunction with the construction of an ADU. Other amendments include ADU and JADUs may not be rented for fewer than 30 days. Properties containing a JADU must be owner-occupied unless the owner is another governmental agency, land trust, or housing organization. And an attached ADU to be constructed on a lot that's listed in the California Register of Historic Resources must comply with all applicable objective standards imposed by the Secretary of Interior. And these standards shall not include requirements on minimum lot size. And so the legal framework, there are many amendments, as I said before, that just became effective. So for the last 3 years running, we've had numerous amendments, and this, hopefully this ordinance will give us a little bit more time before they change it again. For instance, the amendments that this ordinance encompasses talks about how the ADU state law was renumbered and relocated within the government code section. And then other legal changes, or excuse me, legislation made changes to state ADU law to define livable space as a space in a dwelling intended for human habitation, including living, sleeping, eating, cooking, or sanitation. It also clarified the law on uncovered parking so that uncovered off-street parking can be demolished, as I said below, demolished in conjunction with the construction of an ADU. There's also by right combinations. This is a very general overview of these 4 different categories of by right, meaning they can come to the counter and get a building permit for these, but there are some rules. So I'll give you a general explanation. This has to do with Senate Bill 543. Government Code section states that there are 4 categories. Numbers 1 and 2 that you see in front of you means that 1 internal or converted ADU can be proposed on a single family property. Also, 1 newly constructed detached ADU and 1 JADU can be proposed. Category 3 means that converted non-livable space of an existing multifamily dwelling can be converted up to 25% of the existing primary units. And detached ADUs are allowed, but there is a maximum of 8 detached ADUs. So there are numerous combinations that can bring the number of ADUs up on a lot. It's kind of encouraging to get more housing. The number of for example, the number of ADUs allowed on a multifamily dwelling lot cannot exceed the number of existing units on the lot. So if you have 4 multifamily units existing, you can conceivably have 4 detached ADUs. But keep in mind, you can't exceed 8 ADUs. Also, a proposed multifamily dwelling is limited to 2 detached ADUs. So if you're starting fresh, you're stuck with 2 detached ADUs. There's also been changes to how we process ADU applications. The proposed amendments, changes to the application processing here is for standard ADU applications. The city has a 60-day period to approve or deny an application. After we receive it, within 15 days, we have to tell the applicant whether or not their application is complete. And then we have to notice them in writing what are the deficiencies to their application. Once they resubmit, we only have 15 days to respond as well. And the whole process is limited to 60 days. But however, we do have pre-approved plans. Some of you may remember that the city has pre-approved plans. That gives us an even shorter timeline now. So let me just go through a little bit of this. The city has 30 days to process an ADU application that used a pre-approved detached ADU plan set. So our plans are for detached ADUs. And then we have to deem the application complete, and we only have 30 days to get through the whole process. So the whole process meaning we either approve or deny. And here I have a snapshot of the first page of our handbook that's on our website. You'll see that our website is here on the slide, but if anybody wants to know the URL, I'll let them know. It has not been updated with the most recent changes, but it is, I'd say, 90% helpful still without an addendum with changes. That being said, the state ADU guidebook has been updated with an addendum. So there's lots of resources here for the public to come to our door with an ADU application. And here are some examples of the architectural styles that we have here for detached ADUs. They do look a lot similar, but they are different. For an example, the roof lines are similar in the way they're shaped, but the materials are different. And the floor plans are pretty similar as well. But the main thing is that it gets people to our counter, and we have 30 days to get them an approval or a denial. So today, to conclude, we're asking the Planning Commission at this public hearing to adopt the resolution which recommends approval of the amendments to the Richmond Municipal Code pertaining to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Does anyone have a question for staff at this time? Yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you all do to keep up with the state multiple times a year, I see. Wanted to share another fun fact that I lived in a JADU in Berkeley for 6 years, and so always appreciate that opportunity to have more type of affordable housing. And I also wanted to say thank you for answering my questions via email, and I did want to follow up. I know you all recently presented the annual progress reports to City Council, and I was just wondering if you've seen an increase in the number of ADUs and JADUs that have come up. And then also in relation to that, I know one of my questions via email had been a little bit about the conversions. So those that were had previously been considered technically illegal, and folks getting converted and going through the whole process. Because I know I've seen up and down the state, there are still a lot of what you would call ADUs, but they're technically not legal or going through the whole process. And so just wanted to get a sense of what's going on here in Richmond. Thank you.
Thank you. I can answer that question. So in terms of the annual progress report, that presentation has not been made to City Council yet, actually. That will be made on May 5th. And so I will certainly be able to provide this group with a copy of that agenda report as it becomes available. Generally speaking, we do see an uptick in accessory dwelling units. We received over 120 applications last year alone for accessory dwelling units. We approved 54 of them. Of that, in the last calendar year, 48 were issued certificate of occupancies, which is slightly higher than our year prior. So we do see them as being a valuable source of housing and affordable housing within the city of Richmond. And because of the general nature and size of ADUs within Contra Costa County, we are able to count ADUs towards low, very low, moderate, and above moderate income units to count towards our regional housing allocation, which is substantially helpful considering the challenge that the city of Richmond faces in providing moderate rental units. And so that ability to see further development has been quite helpful. And so with the pre-approved plans we've approved, I think last time I checked 3 or 4 sets, and there's 1 or 2 that have now submitted for building permit, and so they're almost done. And we're again in the process. We'll as we bring this forward to council, we'll be updating the ADU toolkit to be very much, again, in sync with the recommended ordinance changes this evening, and then continuing to make sure that our plan sets are continued update with the building code to continue to be available to members of the public.
And just following up, of those units that you just mentioned, do you know offhand if a lot of them are new construction or if it's 25%, 50% that are converted?
I would say that a third, maybe 2/3 of our ADUs are converted ADUs. Again, we're talking about someone who's had a garage or a room that has been previously converted, it was previously created into an ADU without the benefit of a permit. And so the process of legalizing is just simply coming in and getting a planning application for a new ADU. We treat it like a brand new one. Planning review is relatively simple and straightforward. I think Nino and Pete probably process the majority of those 130 we get a year. We get a few fun ones that are always pushing the boundaries of state law, but the majority are people who've, been informed that, the best way to maybe potentially see value added to their home or property or in the process of selling would be to legalize their ADU. And then when it was built prior to 2020, of course, there's a different set of rules around the habitability standards that the building department would look at. And so our building department's very familiar with the standards and regs that go into how we review for limited amounts of habitability for units that were developed prior to 2020.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff?
I have a couple. There was a slide that had a reference to livable space, and then I see that there's a definition on livable space, but is that something that the state, is that part of the new state ordinance, or, and I wonder kind of what it means.
Yeah, so they did actually kind of narrow down the livable space definition. So it's basically storage rooms, things that you actually can't live in, like closet things and things like that, can be converted into ADUs as long as it meets building code standards for being livable. So they have a specific definition, and apparently was actually needed.
I see, in other codes.
Say again? I'm sorry.
Those other requirements are in other code, like building code.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
The state's finally caught up to building code, so to speak. So there's an actual definition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other question was about a 30-day requirement. It must be rented for more than 30 days.
Yes.
How does that get tracked, or does it? I mean, it's hard to know, right?
So the city of Richmond, through our municipal code, does not allow for the rental of accessory dwelling units for less than a period of 30 days. At that point, it would be considered a short-term rental. And because all property owners of the city of Richmond are required to have a rental license to rent a property, it is then their responsibility to inform the city if they have an accessory dwelling unit or a junior ADU, that unit is not being rented for a period of less than 30 days. Now, that being said, that does not mean that if you went on Airbnb or VRBO or one of the other many sites that offer short-term rentals that you wouldn't possibly find units within the city of Richmond that are being rented for less than 30 days. And so when those do come up through code compliant cases, through code enforcement, the city staff is then reviewing and then issuing notices of violation where corrections needed to remove those units from those short-term rental listing sites.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you. No other questions.
Okay. Let me open up for the public hearing. Again, there doesn't seem to be anybody here in the chambers. Is there anyone online wishing to comment?
There is no one online currently.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We further discussion or move ahead to a motion? It's going to take a long time to read this one, so whoever gets the short straw.
The new person has to read the long one.
It's my turn. Motion to adopt resolution number 26-07 recommending approval of zoning text amendments to sections 15.04.104.020, 15.04.201.030, and 15.04.201.050 and 15.04610.020 of the Richmond Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units as shown in attachment 2.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a motion and a second? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner or Chair Harrison,
Yes?
Vice Chair Burbaker.
Yes.
Secretary Timmons.
Yes.
Commissioner Golovitz is absent. Commissioner Shahid
Yes.
and Commissioner Benitez.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that brings us to commission business. Are any reports from the commissioners or staff that coming forward here? Don't see any. Oh, good.
No, as far as updates go, I just want to take the opportunity to welcome our two most recent additions to the Planning Commission. We're very glad to have you on board. Your expertise in your respective fields is going to help continue to develop our Planning Commission and kind of really broaden the ability of this commission to represent Richmond as a whole. I will also add that the mayor's office will be appointing an additional planning commissioner at the next public hearing for council, so you will be a full board. We'll be very excited. So there'll be a very.
Behalf for
It took a little bit of pushing, but we got it there, and so we'll be glad to have a full board, a full representation of Richmond as a whole. And as I provided to you some documents on just how the Planning Commission operates from the California League of Cities, there'll be an opportunity probably in the upcoming months for a legislative training and update just to continue to keep you apprised of the many changing laws. We're still digesting them ourselves as we kind of get into the new year and make sure we're compliant. And then as far as forecasting, we will have a special meeting on the 16th, thank you, where Pete Severin will have two presentations for two projects. I know that Commissioner Timmons, you will not be present, but we will have so many wonderful commissioners that we'll always have quorum. And then following that, we will continue to bring additional code updates related to different topics and things that come up. The major one is going to be in May. Late May will be the update to the environmental justice element, the noise and safety component of our general plan, and the kind of bringing together the local hazard fire mitigation plan and a noise component that will kind of finalize and round out the general plan for some final amendments that needed to be made. And then later this year, we will begin kicking off the update to our general plan to 2050. So we'll continue to have our meetings once a month. We have lots of items on the horizon, number of projects, new housing projects and policies to bring forward. So we're excited to have this board be a full board and continue to be able to provide service to the city of residents of Richmond.
Thank you. That sounds exciting. Is there any update on what's going on with the Hilltop area? Are they still in discussions?
As far as the Hilltop Mall, I can turn it over to Michelle Morris, Senior Planner, who leads and PMs the Hilltop specific plan.
So right now, we are very, very busy doing our analysis and working on the preferred plan. So things are moving along, and hopefully we'll have some outreach later on this year. So hopefully the sooner the better. So I will be updating the Hilltop Horizons website when we have dates for different community outreach events. So keep an eye on that. Yeah, so things are moving. It's very exciting.
Great. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, then I will adjourn a meeting at 7:44. Thank you all very much for attending.